Because even though some people don't live in a small town, they might be kind of small town mentality, and just getting out and having those experiences that really launched your career.
There's not a lot of people who do my job in my town. And if I'm going to be successful at this, I have to use every resource I can.
Welcome back to Lessons from Last Time. This week, I have got a couple of people on the show, and I am very excited for them because we have hung out in many different locations, and now they get to be here in studio. So Kathryn, Pedersen, Michael, Regan, thank you for coming. Michael, you've been a guest on the podcast before.
It's true, and I'm glad to be back, Ken. It's great to be with you.
Awesome. And I've always wanted to have you on the podcast, so this is really cool to have you here. We met, over Clubhouse at first, and I remember right away I was like, this woman is awesome. Like, that was my initial impression of you. You were like the connected one. And we're going to talk today about mentoring and coaching, and that's kind of our theme for the month. And initially, like when we prepared for this podcast, it was like, well, Michael's been her coach and you guys built this podcast together. And so this concept of Michael as coach, Kathryn as learner is actually, as I was thinking about it, you were a mentor way before I knew you as somebody being coached. So talk about your Clubhouse journey a little bit, because some people watching probably don't even know what Clubhouse is. It kind of came and went pretty fast, but talk about how you got into that.
So I'm in a little tiny town. And because of that, I don't have a lot of people to connect with who do the same thing that I do. So reaching out to people outside of that has always been very important. So I've known, Dave Savage and a whole bunch of people in the industry for a while, and I use that as my connection to other people. So when Clubhouse happened pretty early, some people were like, hey, you should look at this. So I popped on and was like, holy cow, this is going to be something. Because 2020, we were all very lonely and wanted that connection. Mm-hmm. So I spent a lot of time on it. It's kind of like a live podcast is the best way to describe it, with these rooms that you can create. So Tony Blodgett and I, whose birthday was yesterday, had a mortgage coach room, and we hosted that frequently. I can't remember how often.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
And we would bring guests in. So we interviewed some amazing people, and there was just crazy things that happened during Clubhouse. And I met a ton of great people like you. And Michael was in the room sometimes. It was just a great way to connect with other people in the mortgage industry.
You're in Steamboat.
Right.
And so not even just small town that you can't even get to a lot of other towns from that town. A lot of people wouldn't extend out of that. Like, they would just be like, I'm small town. That's who I am. That's where I'm from. That's what I do. Have you always been in Steamboat?
Yeah. Well, I've always done mortgage in Steamboat. I was born in Boulder.
Okay.
But really mortgage in Steamboat, and I kind of had to invent it. So the bank president, I was like, we have to open a mortgage department. This is crazy. We're sending out all these files. And he was like, great, open one up. And I kind of want to open next week. And so I was like, oh, I have to figure out how to do this. So I reached out to some people and said, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing. Can you help me? And luckily that person was super involved with Todd Duncan. And he was like, hey, this is a good person to follow. And then from there, it just kind of kept going, where I thought, there's not a lot of people who do my job in my town. And if I'm going to be successful at this, I have to use every resource I can. So I think for me, I really like to be around dynamic, fun people. And I don't know if it's just a weirdness that I have, but
I hope it's not a weirdness. We're all weird.
That's true.
And why did you look at me to validate?
I know. Am I weird?
Well, I'm like, am I weird compared to other people? But I do need that interaction with really smart people who are doing amazing things in their business. And I seek it out, and then I make friends, and I try to keep those friends.
I think we just hit the first lesson. And I got to tell you, when I was in mortgage, I only went to conferences my company paid for. And so if they didn't pay for it, I'm like, well, I'm not going, obviously, right? And when I started my company back in 2003, I started having to pay for the conferences. And I found that I was going to more conferences because I could pick and choose which ones I wanted. But I was getting out there and getting these great experiences and and it just made me mad that I didn't do it earlier. So our first lesson is get out there and be around people. Because even though some people don't live in a small town, they might be kind of small town mentality, working in their one person shop or working in a smaller area, and just getting out and having those experiences that really launched your career, I would say. Even though, did it help you in that you were doing more mortgages back home?
Oh yeah. I think that I got to learn from amazing people who were producing way more than me, because I was definitely the largest producer in Steamboat. So then it's like, well, that doesn't really matter. I need to, let's say, go to a roundtable that Michael hosted to learn from other originators and then implement those things. So I think it definitely made me a whole different person and a whole different manager and in leader in my industry and in my town.
You know the goldfish scenario, if you put a goldfish in a bigger bowl, it starts growing bigger, but only grows the size of the bowl. You just decided, I'm a big fish in a small pond. I'm going to now make a bigger pond, even though back home, I'm still going to be this loan officer in this town. I'm going to be the best one and best kept getting better. At what point did you reach out to Michael for coaching, or did you coach with anybody else before?
I had a couple coaches before Michael, which is good because now I can compare and contrast. So
Oh, yeah.
that's always nice. But yeah, I had a coach, and then I had a building champions coach, and kind of moved around a little bit, and then decided, you know what, I think it's time for a coaching change, and reached out to building champions, and they connected us.
What should somebody be looking for if they're like, I want to go find a coach? Should they be looking for somebody who's exactly like them, exactly opposite them? Is there a personality vibe?
I would say you kind of know from a conversation what they're going to be like, because there's some, let's say, that are very, very strict and demanding and yell. Oh,
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. So it has to match what's going to work for you. And I wanted someone that was going to be honest with me, that had other originators that they were talking to. Because if you have a coach who, let's say, only deals with a whole different industry, they may not see what other people are doing. And I like someone that's a connector, like Michael, who can, let's say, introduce me to people like you or other people in the industry so that I can learn from others.
Michael, what should somebody be looking for in a coach, personality?
Well, you asked a really interesting angle to that question, which is, does personality matter? And I think at the end of the day, that's going to matter most, because when you look at the mindset of the coaching relationship, you've got to believe that this person can help make me better in whatever area I'm aiming to get better. Some folks, it's just about their loan production. And so in that case, you might be looking for someone who has that experience or has that evidence of a system that works, or they've done it themselves. There's something there. But if the personality is not a good match, you're going to spend most of your time resisting what they're coaching you to do, because you're thinking, well, yeah, that works for you, Ken, because you're leveraging a natural style. I need you to understand me. I need you to understand my natural style. I need you to help me develop the skills that are natural to me, because I don't want to become somebody else. I want to be the best version of me. So I think they pick up quickly, as maybe Kathryn alluded to, on, does this person really seek to understand me, or do they only think the universe revolves around them? And if you want to be coached by me, you're going to have to follow me and do everything I do. And I work very hard to make coaching about my client, not about me.
Interesting. So if you've got just like a system, everybody that coaches with me goes on this system. They're going to do these things. I'm going to follow up with them this many times. I'm going to yell at them. It's a totally different style of coaching.
It is, but let's be honest. There are some folks that need that system, and there are folks that benefit from that system. So I never want to take a shot at that, because that also starts to sound arrogant, like, well, I think the way I do it is better. I think the way I do it is unique, but not necessarily better. My job is to find out who are the right people that will benefit from the way I do it, and then make sure they understand why I do it that way. I think of the way that I approach coaching a little bit more like how a custom home builder works. All homes are going to be built on a foundation. Like, you're not going to build your house on the dirt without a foundation. So the foundation are what we're going to call the fundamentals. And if you looked at the fundamentals of Building Champions coaching and compared them to any of the other coaching platforms, you'd start to recognize a lot of tomato. It's a lot of the same foundation fundamentals. But once we get above the dirt and we're going to start building, I want to make sure the systems we build are built on the vision of the client, not the vision of the coach. And so it's much more important to me to understand, what is the desired end result of my client? What is the future version, personally and professionally, that they're aiming toward? And I want to step into that danger of, okay, we're going to create a system based on a lot of history and a lot of best practices that's uniquely designed around you, just like a custom home builder. At the end of the day, every custom home has things like walls and doors and rooms, but they're unique. There are little touches that make that home feel different than any other home. I want my clients to have that same feeling, that the system we designed was really built around their vision, not mine.
I love that. I love that it's crafted around the person, but it has there's some similar threads that run through them. I also love that you separated out the personal and professional. With my coaching, and I coach with Bill Hart, his whole take is I can't help you professionally while you're going through something personally until we can deal with this personal thing to get you to the professional side. So sometimes your achievements aren't because you're not working hard. It's because your head's not in a space where you can be the best version of yourself. So we got to, tear through that stuff. I can remember coaching with Bill where one whole session was about me and my son. It was like, man, my son's struggling. I got to figure this out. And he's like, all right, let's go. But to me, that was important that my coach had kids, that he had dealt with struggles with his own kids. Cause now I know he's not just making stuff up. So I do think picking a coach, super important. Also that you said, figure out what you want first. If I just need, I don't do what I'm supposed to do, but I know what I'm supposed to do. Cool. Then just babysit me and hold me accountable for these things would work for some people in that situation.
The personal matters because I look at this through the lens of the whole life. Yes, the professional life is critical to the bigger picture, but it's not the only piece of that puzzle. And if all we do is focus on business and we don't recognize where it fits in the context of their personal life, you can really make the mistake of steering someone the wrong way. And I know our episode is a little bit about mentoring, and I think that's a danger of some mentors is they're so wrapped up in their own ego that they forget that this person has to keep living long after that influence is gone. Did you help them become a better version of themselves, or did you just accomplish your own goals and you feel better and you got paid, but you don't care? Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm just not wired that way.
Well, you would feel pretty bad if that was the case, right? If you were taking money from somebody and not feeling like you were helping them get to another level, I don't think you could live with yourself at that.
It'd be hard to imagine, but lots of people seek coaching for weird reasons. I've met people, especially when Building Champions had a really strong presence in the mortgage industry. I would meet people who wanted to be coached by Building Champions because that was a box to check. It was something to put on their LinkedIn profile or their resume was, I've been coached by Building Champions. I don't know that they really cared that much about where we found them and where we left them. They just wanted the gold star. That's a hard one for me. I want to work with someone who genuinely sees the potential of a better version of themselves. A lot of the reason we start with a life plan is I want to understand how they see themselves today, where they see themselves in the future, how big is that gap, and will you invite me on that journey with you to help you close that gap? That kind of coaching excites me. So yeah, then if we're talking about did we make calls on a Tuesday? Did we have a date night on a Friday? To me, those both feel equally important.
When Kathryn came to you and was like, let's get, I want to get coached or whatever, what could she have said that made you go, nope? Like, these are the things that once you said that, I know we're in the wrong space. Like, what did you watch for with different people you interviewed?
I will have an initial interview with someone, and it's really clear to me that they have an agenda that is not oriented toward that bigger picture. They have an agenda almost stay out of everything else but this. I only need you to do this. Again, it's not my place to judge. I help them find where they need to go because I know there are other coaching organizations that can help them. And I want to, because I care, I want to help them. But I don't need to be everyone's coach. I know that I'm going to be a great fit for certain people. I'm not going to be a great fit for others. And part of my job is to be humble enough to say, that's not a good fit for me, but I definitely know where you can get some help. I just did it on an initial interview this week with a gal, and I felt great about pointing her to another resource because I could see that what she needed, she'd find there. So yeah, I think I have to ask really good questions. I have to be a really good listener, and then I have to stay true to my own convictions, and then hopefully help people get where they want to go.
Kathryn, you're coaching with Michael, you're growing your business still, things seem to be going well. You start attending a lot more conferences, start meeting a lot more people. At what point did the podcast come up?
I think part of it was from Clubhouse. I loved talking to people and finding these interesting stories. And I thought, I might want to start a podcast. And it was going to be about people moving to a small town because there was a ton of people doing that at the time, and kind of what to be prepared for with that because it's a whole different world. And then 2020 was what it was. And my husband was like, I don't know if adding another project to your plate during 2020, 2021 is a great idea. And I was like, yeah, he's probably right. So I tabled it. And then later, I'll let Michael finish the story.
In 2020, when that conversation came up with you and Todd, you were a little bit busy
Right.
with quite a few clients.
Oh, rates are 3%. Like,
And
is
so I
bonkers.
can
It was
totally
insane.
respect
Oh,
Todd's
totally.
resistance to this new idea. Bright, shiny objects can be a danger zone. Kathryn had this idea and it was tabled. One of the things that I'm responsible for anytime a client says to me, hey, this is a new thing I want to explore, it's my job to remember to bring it back into their view in a later frame. Because they're busy, right? Their life is moving forward at light speed sometimes. And it's easy to forget that, oh yeah, I had that great idea 3 years ago. We never did anything with it. Well, we got a few years down the road. And I think as 21 became 22, and after the first quarter of 22, when rates decided to start moving back into what I would consider to be a normal zone instead of this artificially low environment we had been in, suddenly you're looking for new creative ways in which to engage. And I had an idea on what I thought might be a live YouTube channel of my own that I was interested in running simply to get my coaching voice out there in a different format. And as I was toying with the idea, I kept thinking back to Kathryn's idea, and I finally decided to challenge her to say, is that idea going to come back around? And she acknowledged, oh yeah, I'm still interested in it. I even bought some equipment for it. I mean, I could probably warm this thing up and get it going really soon, but I'm not sure if it fits. And so I flipped the script on her and said, well, what if I did it with you? But at that point, I was past the point of it being just her idea. I work in a musical environment, meaning I like to write songs. And in the creative process, sometimes the guitarist just has a riff and the drummer has a beat. And sometimes you need to work those things out to start to develop a song. And I knew Kathryn had a seed of a great song. And I thought if I could take my idea and get her to see that we could combine those two together, maybe it wouldn't be about the small town, but we could take some of the elements of it that she was interested in and turn it into the vision I had for what became Building Bigger Lives. And I think when I pitched it to her, she said, oh my gosh, if you really want to do that, sure. But I think she found out later that, yeah, this wasn't just a pet project. We're, 110 episodes in now? I really wanted this to be something that defined an opportunity for the world to see what a really great relationship can look like between a coach and a client, because I very much treat Kathryn on the podcast like she's the host. I'm here to provide color commentary when I can. And I think that is a really great feature because we really get to see some of the insight that she has, or some of the wisdom that she has, or even some of the curiosity, which I think is really her secret ingredient. And it's fun. It's fun to be able to work with someone in a co-host environment that plays off of your style so that we're not competing for the same space. We're actually working well together. And I think it was her initial idea, my independent idea, and the combination of those two that made Building Bigger Lives happen.
I'm part of a podcast club now where we listen to different podcast episodes, some national thing, and we get together and talk about podcasts. I love a great podcast, but a great podcast usually has a heart. Like, this is why we're doing this. This is what we're doing. And when I talk to people who are like, I'm going to do a podcast. Like, what's it about? I mean, we're going to do some of this and some of that. And it's like, no, you have to have a clear mission or don't start a podcast, right? So what's the mission? What are you trying to accomplish with Building Bigger Lives? What's the theme kind of around it?
For me, I've gotten so much from this industry. I've made friends. I've built a business. I have all these amazing, great things. And you sometimes forget how far you've come. And so it's really fun to give that back, but then also to highlight some amazing people who are my friends and say, hey, everybody should know this great person, because they may not be the one on stage, but they have these amazing ideas. I was sitting in a conference once next to a high producer, and every single producer that came up, they would flash this is their volume. And
They would say that like out loud?
on the screen.
Oh, on the screen.
Right?
Okay.
And so
Hi, I'm Ken. I did 50 billion last month.
Yeah, exactly. So every single person that had less volume, he would say, I don't need to listen. I only listen to the people who are doing more than me. And so I was like, gosh, that's really weird, because I got this great idea from this person who is like a small producer, but is very creative. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to highlight those people that have great ideas, but nobody is listening. Mm-hmm. And so those are kind of my two missions. I'll be curious to hear yours, Michael.
Well, let's dovetail off of Kathryn's version of that, because I think the thing that intrigued me about the original idea that you had from the version that would have been small town Small Town Big Lives, I think was the direction that was going, was it gave Kathryn an opportunity in her community to highlight some of the really interesting entrepreneurs that were running small businesses, because that's a big part of the fabric of a small town. You don't have big box retailers, you don't have the big shopping malls and all the options. You've got mom and pop shops all over the place that are run by locals, people that are part of that community. I was intrigued by that because the entrepreneurial spirit is the thread that I think weaves a lot of us together in the housing industry. Even though we may, for tax purposes, earn a W-2, we tend to think we're running our own business. We tend to think that we're independent, and even when we're reporting to someone. And so the spirit is alive there. And I was really intrigued about our ability to take what Kathryn just shared and highlight that entrepreneurial spirit. Obviously, our audience is largely from the housing industry because that's where we come from, but we fight very hard to find applications that go outside of just real estate and mortgage lending. Or we'll use those examples because we know them well, but point out where they might apply to you in other areas of a business that you might be running outside of those industries. And so I think that's where Kathryn kind of laid that foundation of, I think this is what I would want it to be. And I was able to say, well, then great, let's really take the passion you have around telling some of those stories. Let's invite some of those folks in from time to time. Let's feature them, and let's make sure that we talk about their entrepreneurial spirit and where that came from and who influenced them. Who were the mentors in their lives? Where did they get inspired to take the risk of launching a business? I don't really care about whether it's a 1099 or a W-2. I care about the lessons we can learn from them. So the vision for this really became clear to me that was our opportunity, and it allowed us both to play to our strengths, which is we love digging into a great story. We've spent, over the last 10 years, a lot of time reading great books from authors. This is our chance to take a different version of writing stories, is let's highlight some of those folks. And then from time to time, it's just the two of us unpacking more of a topic that we feel like deserves it. And so Kathryn maybe becomes the guest. I'm interviewing her because she's really the expert on that topic. So we weave both into the mission of our podcast.
Do you find that when you talk to people, most people have that person that affected them in life that caused them to be where they are today, or that led them down that path? Do you see mentorship showing up in these conversations?
Yes, every single time.
Okay.
It's, hey, who influenced your life early is a rough question that we ask. And then who are you listening to now? Who are you being influenced by today? Are both questions that we do dig into. But everyone has this great story of a coach, a parent, maybe an early manager or boss who really helped guide them in their journey.
Yeah, we make some of our guests a little bit uncomfortable because we take that question and we really push into it. Like, no, take us back before we knew you as Ken, the founder of the Knowledge Coop. Take us back to junior high Ken. Take us back and tell us the story of who was influencing you at a young age. Might have been mom and dad, might have been a teacher, might have been, a coach, but who was influencing you to find that leadership ability within you? Where did the seed get planted that, wait a minute, I could step into that. I could do that. And you find most people do have a really interesting story. And sometimes we find out live without a net on the podcast that they're thinking about it for the first time in 30 years because no one asks them that. We get told that regularly of, wow, I've never talked about this publicly, but I'll tell you the story of, and it becomes this really interesting highlight of a person in their life. And I love that you use the word influence, because today we live in a world where influencers it's kind of a throwaway word. But the truth is, if you really look at the root of Kathryn's intention with that, is it's hard to invite someone to be a mentor in your life if they don't first influence you. You must feel some influence from that person before you lower the shield a little and invite them in as a mentor. And so I think that's a key ingredient to mentorship, is you have to feel inspired by something in that person that would cause you to say, I'd like to follow them for a little while.
Well, I have a very important question for each of you. Who influenced you in your life, Kathryn? Who were the people that you looked up to, person or people that you looked up to that made a huge difference in your life?
I worked at Norris Financial right after college, and a lot of people in our industry actually did start at Norris Financial, but it was just a very difficult job, right? And it taught you great things. Like you learned to solicit and you learned to sell and you did all these things. So I was at a conference, shocker, and I had a booth set up for dentists, right? And this lady had worked for then Norwest Bank. And so we were like, oh, hey, the Norwest Bank, the Norwest Financial people, hi. And we hung out, and her name is Kathy Dalps. And she was like, are you interested in maybe looking at a job here at the bank side? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So she ended up hiring me as her assistant. And I, from there, became a private banker. But she kind of reached out to me and said, you know what? There's more for you out there. And I still call her my bank mom. I love her to death. She's amazing. And she definitely changed the trajectory of my whole life. Because then, as I was dating my husband, she was like, oh my gosh, what happened today? Oh, what, like, because I had this big crush on him. And so her and I would like scheme and do all these things. And she was hilarious. She was the one I told you about in Denver that I was at lunch with. So she definitely kind of said, dream bigger. And then from there, I moved to Steamboat. So she was a big change.
How crazy is that? You show up at one thing and it changes your life.
Yeah.
And there's so much of that you can see if you just ask people, so how'd you guys meet? Oh, I have a friend who met his wife in a bar, and he's like, I walked into this bar with my buddies and we locked eyes and I knew. And it's like, well, if you wouldn't have, your entire life goes different. That's wild. Michael?
I can tell you really quickly mine, and it's a friend that we all share in common. My friend Todd Bookspan and I were both working at a place that we don't talk about and you won't find on our LinkedIn because we're not very proud of the way that company performed back 25 years ago. But when we were working there, we were spending a lot of time competing with each other as production teams, his team and my team, both friendly competition. And at some point, it was Todd who said to me, you think differently than a lot of other people here. And there are people that think like you, and I think a little bit like me, and they meet out in the desert at this place called Sales Mastery.
Oh my gosh.
And at first, this sounded honestly like really goofy to me. Like, oh no, are we going to be,
put on this robe,
right,
and drink
right,
this Kool-Aid.
Right. And so I think I was a little hesitant, to be fair, but I liked Todd. I respected Todd. And I had a lot of, and by the way, Todd was a peer of mine. So sometimes that's an important thing to point out is that mentoring doesn't always have to mean senior in age or senior in experience. Sometimes it's the uniqueness that they bring that can help shape that and influence you. And in Todd's case, he just said, just trust me, just come with me, just go. You're going to meet people that are going to inspire you. I went out to that event, and if I'm being really honest, I could go back to, whenever that was, 2003, and look at the lineup of who was on the stage that day. One man stood out on that stage to me from all of the other men and women who spoke, and it was because he took an approach in his presentation that was different than everyone else, and that man was Daniel Harkavy. And I remember thinking as I walked out of the room after his session that, okay, that guy is different. What he talked about is different, and what he sees in this industry is different. I'm simply curious about why. Why is it different? Why is he here with all these other people that he seems to be friendly with, but they don't seem to be in alignment on everything? And I couldn't figure it out. So I went to their booth, and they, talked to me a little bit about something called Building Champions. I didn't know what that was. And so I kind of stuck that in my hip pocket. I knew about them now. I knew about him now. And I got back to my office, and one of the loan originators on my team had a book on his desk a couple months later, and it was called Becoming a Coaching Leader. And I picked it up, and I thought, oh, that's an intriguing title. And I started flipping through it, and I noticed Daniel Harkavy's name was on the spine. And the loan originator said to me, you should keep that book, and you should read it. You're the kind of guy he wrote this for.
Oh, wow.
So when you think about this, it's Todd telling me to go. It's Daniel standing out on a stage. It's this loan originator, Eric, thanks again, because I really appreciate you sharing your book with me, that inspired me to see that there is a whole nother angle to this business that we're in. And frankly, that changed the entire trajectory of everything I've been doing for the last 20 some odd years. And Ken, I just want to acknowledge this. I know you're interviewing us, but that was what was so exciting for me last summer when we got on the stage together in Las Vegas, because you stepped into a vision for a presentation at an event very similar to Sales Mastery, in which your spirit and your desire to communicate was rooted in exactly what I saw from Daniel 20 some odd years earlier, which was, I don't want to do the same version or a different version of the same talk that everybody else is giving. I really want to speak from the heart. And that's what I look back on and see that Daniel did. He spoke from the heart. He didn't speak from pitching anything or pushing anything. He spoke with authenticity. And I saw that come out in you. And that was really exciting for me because we were talking about the partnership between Knowledge Coop and Building Champions. And that felt like a really cool bookend to that part of my story.
Great transition from that into more mentoring. That was the event where you and I met beforehand. We went on stage together and we talked about, like, we just want that one person to like hear it and be impacted and have a life changed. And we finish the seminar, or we finish our session, and I go back to our booth, and guy walks up to me. He's like, "Hey, do you coach?" And I'm like, "Nope." And he goes, "Do you mentor?" And I'm like, "Say more." And he's like, everything that you said, like, I really identify with those things, and I want to be mentored." And I'm like, "Then yes." So talk about, like, for both of you, have you seen this in your lives where you've been coached, you've had a good example of coaching? Have you seen, like, you've been able to impact lives?
Met with someone the other day who was a buyer, and she was like, "I just don't know if I should buy. This is what I'm thinking." And she was crying and talking about her boyfriend. And I thought, wow, in this moment, she doesn't need originator Kathryn. She needs like my friend hat. So I told her, like, "Hey, I'm putting on my friend hat. This is my, like, if you're my kid, this would be my advice to you." And so it approaches us, and we just have to be open to it. Because I think so many times we can be like, "Well, I'm an originator, so 100% always buy because this makes sense." And instead, you have to step back and go, what does this person need? And I think we can find people who need a mentor all the time. Mm-hmm. And it might be for those 5 minutes. It might be like, we were in Belize, and there was this random girl who came up, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, are you guys mom and daughter? It's amazing." And something in me was like, she needs to hear something. So I went up to her later, and I was like, "Just so you know, for some reason, you need to stand up for yourself. And I don't know why I'm telling you that, and she was just like burst into tears, and I walked away, and I was like, that's what she needed." So sometimes you can just sense these things in people. And I think that's the most important thing. You can have an official mentor, but sometimes it's just those moments that come up that are so key.
I think that sometimes we make synonymous what we do as coaches with mentoring, and I want to separate them just for the purpose of exploring it a little bit. You know, when someone comes to me for coaching, but they're not really sure if they want coaching or mentoring, that person is always driving the agenda. But the difference is, if they want mentoring, they're trying to access my skills and my experience. Where if they want coaching, they're trying to leverage their skills and their experience. And so I have to be really careful when I'm not sure to clarify what it is that they really want from this, because often what looks like advice or counsel or wisdom, which would all fall in the mentoring category, turns out to be, "I just want your opinion. I just want to hear what you think. I want to see how you react, but not so sure." And I had a great mentor once tell me in this scenario of the coach who's being asked for advice to be the mentor. And he challenged the person and said, "Okay, but before I start giving you my advice on this, do you promise to do exactly what I say, exactly how I say to do it?" Person kind of paused and thought, "Well, I don't know. I guess that depends on what you tell me." He said, "Then it sounds like you already know what you want to do. You're just looking for me to validate it. So let's stay focused on what you want." And I loved the power of that, because it reminded me that we have to be really careful not to assume everyone always wants me to give them advice or to mentor them. Sometimes they're just trying to bounce ideas off of you. They just need a sounding board. Maybe they even want to hear their own ideas out loud, and they want to see how someone reacts to them. But just know that I'm thinking of that when I'm having conversations with clients. Are they seeking my coaching on this, or are they seeking my mentorship? If mentorship is what they need, it allows me to be in a much different position where I'm waiting for them to, bring the topic, bring the question, let's talk about it. If I'm coaching them, I might be pushing more because you've already told me what you want. Let's get around to why it is that you're avoiding it, why you're confusing your reasons with excuses, why it is you're not doing what you said you would do. They end up looking a little bit different, which is interesting once you start going down the road a little bit. So I think you have to explore that a little bit.
You guys, thank you for sitting down with me. The mentoring, the coaching, awesome. I also want to just call out, you did such a good job with the way that you've built your career by going out and being around other people. And the more I speak on isolation and social engagement, and the more I see stats on just how risky it is to be socially isolated, you are a great example, Kathryn, of somebody that went, I'm not going to be, I'm like, the truth is out there. The friends are out there. The people that my growth is out there. And you actually activated and went and did that, which is such an encouragement. If you're watching this and you're not going out and being around other people, you've got to go do that. Like, you've got to make those steps. For some people, it's really hard. For others, we love people, so it's easier. But take the steps to go out and do those things. You never know who you're going to meet. And I always say there's somebody out there that needs just that look you're going to give them, that thing you're going to say to them. And if you're open to that, you've opened your heart to that, then they need you to be there so that they can benefit from what you have to offer to the crowd. And you need to be there for what somebody in that crowd has to offer to you. So we're going to leave it at that. I appreciate your time so much. This has been very awesome. And thanks for joining us.